Our next panel is AI in action, and this is obviously one of the hottest topics in the industry right now. Everyone's trying to figure out where AI actually fits into healthcare staffing, what's useful, what's overhyped, and how agencies can use it in ways that genuinely make an impact. So before we get started, I'd love to welcome our sponsor, Denisa from LaborEdge, to the stage for a brief introduction.
Woo.
Let's give it up for Denisa. Woohoo! Thanks.
Denisa! I'm not Denisa. She's coming.
Well, hello, everybody. I know we're probably all ready for lunch. We'll hopefully make this brief. But here at LaborEdge, innovation and efficiency is key to us, so very important. It's always at the top of our mind, which is why I'm very excited to introduce this next discussion. AI is quickly becoming more than just a buzzword and something we're all immediately attracted to. I feel like we're at a point where it's helping healthcare staffing agencies and workforce management teams with everything. It's helping us make better decisions, create stronger experiences for the clinicians because they're also using this, and work smarter. Everybody wants to work smarter, not harder. So today we'll explore what that looks like in practice, from opportunities that AI is creating to the real-world impact that we're seeing across the industry that we've been seeing over the last few years. I feel like for us, it took us some time to trust it, but I feel like we're finally getting to that point. So with that, let's welcome our panelists for today, AI in Action.
All right, guys, moving right along here. So AI, you guys know we can't have a conference on AI, right? It's got to be at least every session. However, reason being is it's the most disruptive technology that's entered our space in the last decade, right? So everyone's struggling with how to adopt AI. And what we saw at TrackFive is, right after the pandemic entered most of this kind of highly functioning AI for use cases within our industry, right? So if you think about it, we had this crazy pandemic, once in a lifetime event, right? Followed by the most disruptive technology entering our space in probably a couple decades, relatively right after each other, right? So, agencies are let us catch our breath. Oh no, this new thing's coming out. We got to get on it. And we found a little bit where agencies are just oh, it doesn't really matter what it is. We need AI. If we don't have AI, we're behind, right? And so we saw a lot of agencies rush to get AI without having an actual use case for it. So our goal today is to talk a little bit about some of those things related to that with our AI in Action panel. So we're going to start here and introduce ourselves going down. So Adam, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first and roll down the line.
Oh, Andrew,
sorry.
Yeah, Andrew Kimmell from Staffing Engine. Big fan of the TrackFive team, and great job of putting this on, you guys. We love working with that team, and happy to be here.
Hey there, Justin Lechner from Harmony, CEO and founder of the company. Super excited to be here and to talk with this great panel today.
Hi, good afternoon. Pankaj, Jindal, one of the founders at Sense. Super excited to be here and talk some AI.
Hi there, my name is Ved. I'm the founder and CEO of Colego. I was previously the Chief Product Officer at Vivian Health. Colego, we build AI teammates specifically for the healthcare and staffing industry. So I'm sure we'll talk about that more during this panel.
Awesome. All right, let's jump right into it. Justin, I'm swinging this one your way first. There's a lot of conversation on AI replacing recruiters. We're gonna give you this one first, Justin. Get ready. A lot of AI conversations about replacing recruiters, which we know isn't entirely accurate. Where does this fear come from? And what does a strong human AI workflow actually look like inside a recruiting team today? Go ahead and answer, and then anyone else who wants to jump in.
Yeah, really good and important question. I think with every technological change, it's scary. And right now with AI and automation, it is particularly scary because we're talking about a technology that is on one hand very powerful and certainly capable in doing work that humans are doing today. I also think Silicon Valley is doing a really horrible job in how they're marketing this technology as far as creating more fear within society right now. So people are on edge and scared. With that said, I think there's actually a ton of room for hope, especially for those that are leaning into the technology. What we're seeing across the board is that with adopting this technology right, which I'm sure we'll talk about, what good adoption and bad adoption of AI looks like, we're actually seeing recruiters are becoming happier, having higher retention within firms, and that ultimately they're becoming much more productive and driving more submissions, more placements quicker, while spending more time on the things that they want to be doing, which are, particularly spending time talking with candidates, not spending time clicking around their ATS. So I think what we'll see over the next, hopefully 6 to 12 months is that the tone slowly changes and we start seeing AI as something that will make jobs, job satisfaction go up while also creating more productivity within organizations that are properly adopting it.
I'll jump in for a second. As a Silicon Valley startup, I feel like I had to take that punch. But the fear is real because I think the way AI is being marketed today is that it can automate every single thing. And you start thinking about, hey, am I losing my job? Is AI just going to take over? Am I not relevant anymore? So that's the part where the fear comes from. Now it's completely unfounded. I've talked about this quite a bit. There are lots of companies, hopefully some that are sitting here in the audience, that will do what's called a time study for their recruiters. So they will actually take a group of recruiters and they'll study what they do for 8 hours every day for a 30-day period. A lot of our large customers have done that. And this is not to find out if they're spending time on a shopping website or what have you. This is just time to find out where the inefficiencies are. And the results will surprise you. They come up with these results where they say 40% of their time is spent on sourcing and screening, and 30% of their time is spent in going back and forth with the hiring managers or scheduling interviews or so on and so forth. Essentially 50, 60, 70% of what a recruiter does is very manual, is very repetitive. That's the part that you want AI to automate. And that's the part that you want AI to also do after hours, 24/7, right? So you become the agency of choice and give the recruiter the flexibility to actually do more wholesome conversations, convincing people, telling them why they should relocate for 13 weeks, to go to a new place and go work there, convince the hiring manager on why they should work with somebody. So I think ultimately we'll find the balance where there is a human in the loop and AI is a co-pilot and not essentially an autopilot.
Let me just add to what Pankaj said. The AI is definitely not replacing recruiters, in my opinion. However, the tasks that a recruiter does is getting reshuffled, right? And what you need to do, and I would respectfully say you should start thinking about this, is how to rewrite that job description of your recruiter so that the job actually focuses much more on the human connection piece of it and much less on the upfront pieces of it, the sort of the outreach and the very basic stuff. The example of a hybrid AI and human workflow that Oliver you're talking about could be that you have an AI teammate, and the AI teammate actually talks to TNS, is connected to TNS, picks up all the candidates that come in from TNS, handles all the engagement 24/7, screening, sourcing, the scheduling, and then passes off that candidate in a handoff to a recruiter. And in that handoff, this is where the hybrid workflow comes in. You have to be really careful about how you manage that handoff. So you have to have measurements and metrics. This AI teammate could hand off this candidate via Teams. It's not using any new systems. It's using the same system as another employee might use. So you gotta have the same systems, but you're gonna monitor that handoff. So did the handoff happen? Did the lead from TNS get picked up? How long did it take before the recruiter responded so that you can identify the leaks in the funnel? But that would be an example of a hybrid, and I would emphasize, the job description is changing, so let's focus on that, and let's not get, the front end of the piece is going to be much more easy to do by the AI.
Great point. Andrew, you have something?
Yeah, in the past, data entry specialists caught wind of the spreadsheet and were terrified that their job was going to be replaced. And so we've been through this before. And actually, the most recent version of it is automation. I mean, automation has been this promise of, and fear that happened of replacing tasks and jobs. And I think part of the confusion is confusing the tasks with the job to be done. And the job to be done takes a certain amount of trust and relationship building that is always the theme in every single one of these shows that we come to. It's just never changed. And I think that's just a really interesting through line. The way that we look at the customer experience and the value of the recruiter, traditionally in a funnel is I prefer to look at more like a sine wave, and the ability to build an emotional rapport with someone and get them to a place where they are willing to trust you is something that is going to be tough to replace. And Sam Altman recently came out and said, the CEO of OpenAI, that his prediction about job replacement was not accurate, and it hasn't come to fruition yet. And most of the experts today believe that it would have been much further along. So I think we're going through this interesting. We always get scared at first when these tech booms happen, and then we're like, well, how does this shake out into the tasks that we need to do to do the job? So
That's great. Ved, this one's coming to you. What are some misconceptions agencies have about what AI tools are actually capable of today?
Right. So at the way I think about it is that at one extreme you've got a misconception that AI can handle everything that a recruiter can do, and it's fairly obvious. And at the other end, you've got an idea that this AI is just like the chatbot that I've had for the last 3 or 4 years. It's neither of those two things. Obviously, the AI is not building those human connections, is not understanding the needs of your nurses, is not sort of figuring out what happened with this particular nurse that motivates her to do something, is not becoming that accountability point that nurse wants. The nurse wants someone accountable for her, who's accountable for taking care of her. The AI is not doing any of that. On the other hand, the AI is doing much more than the chatbot, right? So the AI can literally look at every single conversation you've ever had with this nurse over the last 4 years and understand all the little things that were mentioned and repeat that back in a very personalized way, whether it's a text message or anything else, back to the nurse. So there's a range there, and we're definitely in the middle. There's no space, I think, for that human connection, but there's personalization, deep personalization, and personalization at scale, meaning you can do that really quickly so that the initial contact and the handoff can actually happen. So it's in between, and also it depends on the kind of skill set that you're hiring for, right? So locums is on one side, and different kinds of professions are on the other side. So you have to calibrate where you deploy it carefully.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think you should think of AI as an amplification mechanism. It'll amplify whatever you have really quickly. If you have bad data, it'll amplify that really quickly. You're going to get really bad results. If you have bad search and match, you're just going to be calling people who don't fit the bill at all. So I think there is something to be said about how you're using AI. I mean, Ved is absolutely right about personalization. Even today, we have customers where for a single job application, they're reaching out to 300, 400, 500 people. And it's just the click of a button where you can say, make all these 500 messages a little different. So no two people are getting the same exact message. None of this spam that we are used to. Every message feels a little bit more personalized. But it also isn't, to your question, it also isn't, hey, I'll just put an AI and that's it. My data problems will be solved. My placements will be solved. It's just going to amplify stuff. So if you had good operations, it'll amplify those as well.
Yeah, totally agree with both of what you said so far. And I think a misconception is that candidates always hate AI engagement. Absolutely, there's a time and place where AI engagement could leave a very sour taste in all of our mouths, and there's a way to do it wrong. What I always encourage is think about the experience that you want to drive towards, and let's work backwards from there. And that's how we could get to an AI engagement that's actually helpful. In particular, when we are accelerating a process. For instance, I think you were mentioning engaging with candidates after hours, or speaking to a candidate about a job that opened where the recruiter is too busy for the next few hours, and you're going to lose the opportunity if you don't engage them right now. These are all really great chances, both for candidates and for recruiters, to be driving speed while maintaining quality. And that's a way to actually have a very good engagement with AI versus some of the bad engagements that we're all seeing today.
Yeah, I think one of the other misconceptions is that it's not just conversational ChatGPT style prompting and response or prompting and answer. There's nearly probably 10 different categories of AI, and that's something that it gets a little mashed up in the way that we market the AI stuff. Everybody's got AI as part of their feature set now. And so like going deeper and just understanding the different types, the ways that they are implemented in the workflow, that's like by far the biggest misconception.
I'm just going to, quickly add one quick thing. Just building up on what you said. People don't hate AI. I will tell you that right now. Candidates love the fact that you can give them quick disposition. 56% of all job applicants in the US apply for a job after hours. They love the fact that within 5 seconds, you can engage with them and say, hey, we have some preliminary questions for you. Based on those questions, we can tell you you're not a good fit. End of story, 5 minutes later, versus some warm and fuzzy hug from a recruiter 4 days later, only to tell you you're not a good fit. So anybody who has that misconception should just absolutely give that up. We have 10, 12 million conversations a month now. Across those 10, 12 million conversations, just as feedback for our product, we will end every conversation or every chatbot with, hey, how would you rate this experience? It's 4.8. Like, find me recruiters that are rated 4.8 after 12 million conversations. So people love the fact that you can give them a quick disposition. You're a nurse in an emergency room. You're applying at midnight because that's your break. Guess what? 3 minutes from now, you already know what this agency wants from you, versus I'm just going to send this into the ether and maybe somebody will respond.
So to piggyback on that, would there be a different use case for an after hours AI implementation versus a during business hours implementation? For example, it's kind of one size fits all right now. Everyone's just slapping AI on using it for everything. It's the same process, right? But for that matter, when the recruiters are there and available and there's people there and it's during the day, they might need a lighter AI touch than, for example, nights and weekends when nobody's there and they want to keep things moving. But we don't generally see that.
Absolutely. First of all, this is your strategy. You get to design what you want. A lot of customers will do not just 2, but 3 or 4 different sort of forks, if you will. One fork is very simple, 9 to 5. You're talking to a lot of candidates who are even inbound. So think of AI being a receptionist, right? I mean, a lot of calls that you missed today or can't take them, just the AI taking those calls immediately and very quickly finding out if this person is valuable and saying, hey, I'm just going to connect you to the recruiter right now. They're available right now. That's the AI receptionist use case, as it is more popularly called now in the industry. So that's one. The second is what we talked about earlier. It's after hours. You collect the information, and in case you pre-screen somebody who turned out to be a good candidate, you can literally say, I'm going to schedule you with a recruiter, what works for you. So even at midnight, you're scheduling them for a time that works for them, which means they're going to show up. So it could be next Tuesday, 12 p.m., whatever it is. You can certainly do that. You can also, choose to do just search and match. Like, this is going to be staple for everybody in healthcare from now on. The idea that you can actually reach out to a job, maybe nobody's reached out to you, but you can reach out to 100 people and say, on this job, we searched against the 1 million people in a database. You don't need to tell them all this, but here are the 50 people who are great matches. You can reach out to them. And when you do, you can do that based on their preferences. If people said, email me, they get an email. Text me, they get a text. Didn't say anything, they get a voice call. Email me during business hours, they get that. After business hours, they get that. So there are obviously ways that you sort of fork out your workflows, but you can absolutely do that.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to add there, because I think this is super critical. I think it's easy when vendors are showing different AI solutions to see it as this kind of cookie cutter solution that plugs in, you have no say. What we're seeing, it's actually quite the opposite. There is so much nuance that goes into the work that everyone in this room is doing And one thing we had to learn early on was if you ignore that nuance, you were ignoring so much of the secret sauce within your company. So the flip side, and where we invest a lot of time, is upfront. We want to work on and really have you in the driver's seat, feel empowered to say, this is the experience that we want. And let's dive deep, let's whiteboard and talk about what that looks like on hours, off hours. We could have triggers based off of response time. So if one recruiter, for instance, doesn't answer quickly, Staffing Engine, for instance, could create an alert saying, hey, someone else should pick this up. So really be thoughtful about the experience you want to drive. And actually, I think this is one of the main ways that you will continue to differentiate your experience. So would encourage everyone to try to be in the driver's seat, think about experience, and then let the technology providers just help service that experience for you.
So you're going to throw. I'm going off script here, guys. So sorry, guys. All right. So the question I have is: you talked about bad data, in, bad data out, right? So AI will amplify if it's a broken, bad data, or for that matter, a broken process, or for that matter, unqualified or lower level recruiters. It's going to amplify lower level output, right? What we've also seen on the same hand with that is as some of the agencies that have implemented AI. I don't know what you would label this as, but there's this kind of recruiter mentality. Automation's got it, AI's got it, and for lack of a better word, the recruiters take their feet off the gas, right? And it creates these holes where there's a handoff issue, or there's this false sense of confidence that they can just kind of step back. And I'm curious how the human versus AI, not just handoff, but relationship goes. Are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing that it's stepping up and recruiters are stepping down in some ways, or how do you mitigate that?
I can take a first crack at that. So absolutely, that's the case. And this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of being clear on the job description for the particular workflow. So, our core thesis is that agencies now and in the future will have a hybrid AI teammate plus human workflow. So you got to design that workflow. And for the role of the recruiter, you got to be clear what the recruiter is doing in that workflow. So in this example, if there's an expectation that a certain handoff is happening at a certain point, these are the SLAs for it. This expect certain response rate, expect certain response time. Many times that goes into a black hole, as everyone knows. So you want to have the workflow design the workflow with your business outcome in mind, whether that's speed to submittal or whether underlying you're actually trying to increase TOAs per recruiter, whatever that business goal is. And then what is the leakage point? And then make sure that this new workflow implementation has the metrics and the analysis that shows that. So did the handoff happen properly from AI to recruiter? How much time did it take, et cetera? So yes, you have to design the workflow, think of it that way, instead of thinking of it as, I'm inserting this AI.
And two things I wanted to just add quickly here as well. You mentioned this earlier. One, I believe that these AI tools should be plugged into all of your existing infrastructure. So tools, which I think AI agents are really acting, the best analog is like a educated assistant for your team or teammate. They should be using the tools that your team's using today. They should be in your ATS, they should be in Teams, they should be using your existing text messaging and calling infrastructure. So from a change management perspective, we know that change is hard. Let's try to reduce a new tab that you need to be in for each recruiter, which I think that is part of the challenge we're seeing, or often one of the challenges in recruiter adoption is just disjointed workflows and pushing for change when everything is moving so quickly. So I would encourage folks to think about where does this fit into your existing process, and as much as possible, try to make this kind of like an invisible technology that runs in the background and is notifying you in Teams or in your ATS when needed versus a new technology that's totally disjointed.
Yeah, I'm going to share a couple of best practices that our most successful customers use. The first best practice is you cannot have every single recruiter designing their own workflow. That is a recipe for disaster. It has to be done by a central person, whether it's your chief operating officer or somebody who's in marketing or somebody who understands operations. But the idea is that you take the behavior of your best recruiter and you mimic that in a workflow, or at least that's what a lot of our customers are doing. Hey, John here just does 7 times better than anybody else. We're going to take what he does and mimic that as your actual workflow. So that's number one. That's one thing to think about. You cannot give every recruiter the ability to say, yeah, automate these 3 things, this one not, this one this one that. That'll be disaster. The second best practice is you have to decide as an organization. There are companies that today opt for a workflow implementation that is human in the loop. So every single thing that AI does, a human is in the loop. Doesn't mean they have to do anything. They're just in the loop. Hey, a new job just opened. Hey, I just matched 100 candidates. I just reached out to all 100. 60 of them responded. I screened 60. 30 of them are good. I've rematched them based on what I learned from their screening. Here are the top 5. Now, at that point, the recruiter can come in and say, I'm going to look at these top 5 and say, are they worth submitting? That's typically what happens in healthcare. In a lot of other organizations, like if you put your mind to a light industrial organization, they don't do that. They'll submit those 5 right away. They don't want the recruiter even becoming a bottleneck for 10 minutes. AI did all of this, gave you the 5 people, and this guy's on his lunch break, and you just lost out. They'll basically go, because the requirements are so straightforward, go ahead and submit. So you could design workflows where there is human in the loop, not in the loop, depends on what kind of positions you're hiring for, but definitely have a single sort of AI philosophy manifesto. And it could be different for different kinds of positions, but it should run centrally and not just run via every recruiter.
I just have so much respect for recruiters and salespeople. I had never worked a desk. I had never held a quota. And I went through a little process of doing a few months of participating as an AE in our company. And it was one of the most eye-opening things ever. As software providers, we've been making software for this Soviet spaceship era of buttons and UI everywhere. And I'm a UI UX designer, so it's like my world. And it's, we want to make it easy as possible and have them do their thing and not miss anybody. And it's crazy. I mean, it's wild to think that you're able to add value and go through this process of flying this Soviet spaceship. But I think the point is, there's a series of risk tiers, I think, that you can think about with AI. Low risk stuff, no human oversight needed. Medium stuff, there's a human in the loop, and high risk stuff, there's even a managerial check process. And so that stuff like the example that you mentioned earlier doesn't happen. That's such a fun example to have, but it's terrible that there can just be that drop off. The enabling the recruiter, to do what they need to do without flying the Soviet spaceship is the era we're heading to, and it's going to be so much easier and so much more empowering for them, and giving them more time to add value is, I think, the goal. So, yeah.
That's a great answer. So I'm going to give one more question, and we'll see if we can keep quick responses, good answer, bad answer, because it's a 2-part. Okay, guys? So where do you see AI having the biggest impact of candidate experience? Give me a better and a worse. Do you want me to repeat the question? Okay.
I mean, the better is a lot of what I talked about, which is you can reach out to candidates after hours. You can give them a disposition really quickly. You can answer questions about the job really quickly. When we do AI interviews, candidates are literally asking, what are the benefits? Some candidates are asking, hey, AI, sell me on the job. And the AI is essentially going, here are 7 things that are awesome. And then they're saying, what are the 2 reasons why I shouldn't be taking a job? So, I don't want to use the word, but it almost becomes a consultant, because it's literally telling you, things that are positive versus negative. So from that standpoint, instant answers, you can instantly get transferred to a human. That's all great experience from my standpoint. I think the worst experience essentially depends on, the use case that you put AI to. If you put AI to a use case with bad matching, you're just going to provide a bad experience. You're going to call a candidate, you think they can do job A, you had a bad job description, you had a bad candidate match. They're hating this because none of the questions the AI is trying to ask they have any clue about. You may have put a bad impression about your entire company just because of one bad call. So I just want to keep reiterating that using AI is not just a single point solution that you add in. And there are quite a few companies who've taken voice AI, the idea that you can just use voice to screen candidates, as a point solution on top of their existing stack, and said, we're awesome. And that has backfired so many times because somebody is still manually doing matching that is not very good, and you're doing bad interviews. So you just have to add it to every part of your process.
And I'll just add to that, so good and bad. The good 24/7 access that Pankaj just talked about, I would again say personalization. You can get a depth and breadth of personalization that's impossible before, and sort of control given back to the candidate for the early part of the process. So those are all good things. There are bad things too. If you're creating AI slop, it's just sort of junk content, you can create a lot more of that and waste. Your spam goes up tenfold, so you can misuse it. Also, if the AI teammate that you're using has a bad conversational style, is too robotic, it's just like you hire a new employee. The employee has to do the work that you've tasked them to do. So in this case, if it's a bad conversationalist and cannot hold the conversation, cannot guide it to its conclusion, that's a problem as well.
Yeah, I'll say I agree with both of those answers as well. So I'll pick some new ones here. So on the good side, I would say that within healthcare in particular, which is where we are spending our time, there's a labor shortage, as everyone knows. So candidates are very empowered, oftentimes talking, as they should be, and talking with multiple agencies at once. What I find incredible is that recruiters today are able to even hold all of this context in their head. There's so much context for each candidate that you're actively working with, where they want to work, certain facilities that they may have had a bad experience, or a friend that had a bad experience in the past. It's an impossible task currently, and recruiters have way too few hours, or way too few hours in a day to spend actually capturing all this context. AI shines at this. It could look at every interaction, as long as it's making it somewhere in your ATS, ideally, every interaction to know what each candidate you're working with is looking for, what their preferences are. And then as soon as a job comes up in which that candidate should be submitted, AI could play a role in helping the recruiter and your account management get that candidate submitted as quickly as possible. So I think that is one area where it really will shine, is in kind of being this just super powerful memory system for every single candidate that you're working with. And then on the bad side, I'll take a more meta answer, which is, I think with all of the excitement around AI right now, it's easy to just want to throw AI at everything suddenly and say, let's AI this and AI that, and just, get kind of carried away. And I would say what I've observed is the firms that are seeing the most success are being much more fine-tuned in how they're approaching AI use cases, picking one use case to start where they think they could really drive impact based off of, looking at their metrics today and seeing potentially, hey, we have all these candidates that are making it to a recruiter desk and not getting placed. Let's focus there, versus saying, let's throw AI everywhere, run a training. Our recruiters have no idea what's going on, and it's just a free-for-all. So would say being focused rather than going too broad right now is how to do it.
Yeah, just one thought here is that there's a concept called the dark work that we aren't able to get to today, and I think that's just one of the biggest positives. And the dark work is the stuff that's just too manual. It's just too annoying. We don't have the time of the day. We've been in this era and this time where we've been doing a lot of things in a previous Soviet spaceship-ish type experience, and so I think that when we get to that dark work is where we find the extra value to add and the ability to, do a lot of the things that have been shared today about adding value and relationship building.
That's a great answer. Some really smart people, eh? All right. We're going to do some Q&A since we ran out of time last time. So start thinking about what you guys want to ask. And if we could have our Q&A people come to the floor and try to find some people. So raise your hand if you got a question for the team. A lot of brain power up here, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So I would definitely use it. Who's got the first one?
Right here.
Hi, my name is Sharon. Thank you for being here. Every month I'm reading about companies that are exceeding their AI budgets as early as April. So can you talk about your pricing models? Because this costs us money. We understand the value of it. And if there's any plans to evolve those pricing models for us to explore. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Sorry, Pankaj. The one thought I had there is this build versus buy debate that our industry has been in forever is obviously rekindled now. You can maybe build it yourself should you buy it. It's fascinating to see those companies burn through those budgets. I think as software providers like we are here, it's our job to make them as accessible and widely available to all different sizes of agencies. So segmenting our features, allowing agencies to grow with the features that they need, not force them down this old enterprisey style sales discussion. And so we just have a monthly cost that is in the $1,000 a month range and varies up and down from there based on what you need.
Yeah, I was just going to say AI is very, very usage based. So you are accurate. There is no way. I mean, we have 1,500 customers. I know of customers that have known for years where one customer is sending 300 text messages a day and somebody else is sending 3,000 a day. And we can stomach that. If you are making 3,000 voice calls a day versus 300, we can't stomach that. You're going to get charged 10 times more. So you have to trust, companies like ours and all of us to essentially say, we're going to talk to you about what your usage should be, and it is directly tied to the ROI. For the first time, we're actually able to do outcome-based pricing. Because for the first time, we can look you in the eye and say, how many people do you screen for a job? 100. Okay. How many of those actually talk to you? 60. Okay. How many of them are actually a fit? 20. Okay. How many of them do you actually submit? 5. Fine. How many of them do you actually get a job for? 1. Be like, okay, one person from 100, AI workflows. Let's say our workflow costs $2 per candidate. So this one placement is going to cost you $200. Is it worth it? Are you making 20,000 margin? Are you making 2,000 margin? Can you spare $200 on a placement? Yes? Great. Okay, that's your pricing from now on. You can do 10 placements, you can do 100. If you do 10, you'll pay us $2,000. If you do 100, you'll pay us $20,000. But wouldn't you be happy paying us the $20,000? So it's very, very ROI based and it is very usage based. But you yourself are never going to find yourself in a situation where, oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this and I suddenly have a $50,000 bill. That's never going to happen. You can have your usage cut off at any time. This isn't one of those token conversations that a lot of people talk about. That's just developers going crazy. This isn't that. This is simply based on how you run your operations and how many people do you want AI to engage with.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to say very similar stuff where the pricing is based on business outcomes. So what is the business outcome and how many of those are you looking for? So pricing based on business outcome with a cap so that you can manage to a budget.
Yeah, same here with all of the above. Business outcomes and usage is very important for any tech vendor. We're drinking from the fountain fire hose right now of all the foundation models. So that is quite expensive, a lot cheaper than human intelligence, I guess. But really, what I wanted to add here is when getting started on any AI initiative, I would just encourage you to think about the ROI upfront and try to test that risk very quickly. Most vendors should be willing to do some sort of proof of concept or pilot, and hopefully you're seeing this is a no-brainer. In the example you were saying, we're driving X number of placements and paying $200. I would encourage you to try for that outcome and see if you're actually achieving it in a low risk sort of proof of concept or pilot before any sort of long-term commitment.
It's interesting too because AI assisted conversions are now some of the KPIs agencies are tracking, right? So it's interesting. We didn't have that a year ago. Do you know what I mean? So it's just how fast the industry is moving. Who's got the next question?
Hey there. So I've only scratched the surface looking into AI tools, what it could do for us. So I could ask ChatGPT or Gemini, but I'll ask you guys since you're here. There are so many vendors and products out there that are promising so many things. Do you suggest that agencies use some kind of criteria, checklist, some kind of framework to determine that this tool, because you can't look at the executable code, right? how do you determine that this is a good tool and it will help you deliver results? Because it's going to be thousands of dollars, and months later, you figure out what it really meant for you.
Just use sense.
I know that's what you want.
No, I'm joking.
I'm joking.
Listen, this is a great question, and there are 3 or 4 very methodical things that you can do. The number one thing is any tool is useless if it does not integrate with your system of record. People are building tools overnight because you can use an app like Lovable and pay $20 and come up with an app, and basically as long as you know how to speak and market, you could literally be like, yeah, we do all of this. It will not write into some of the crummy systems that healthcare staffing agencies live with today. It certainly wouldn't even write into some actual systems of record that exist today, right? Integration is the dirty work. The plumbing is the dirty work that a lot of these companies aren't doing. So first and foremost, you have to narrow it down by, here is my ATS, who has a great bi-directional integration. That's number one. Then there's number 2. There is no such thing as, and I keep stressing this in my talk over here, as an AI product. I don't know what that is. Voice AI is an AI product. Matching is an AI product. Chatbot is an LLM-based product. Machine learning-based job matching. They're all AI products. The idea is you have to understand, here is my workflow. These are the inefficiencies. Who fills these inefficiencies? What you don't want is to say, I'm going to get one vendor to do voice, one vendor to do search and match, one vendor to do outreach, because, hey, here are all the 3 things I need, because then you're screwed. So it further narrows down your criteria. So first you're starting with who even integrates. Now you're going, who does my entire workflow? And then post that, I would say, hey, do these people have any domain experience? For instance, the largest cache of customers we have is healthcare. So when somebody throws, and healthcare has millions of these, when people throw acronyms at us, when they throw certification names at us, we're not sitting there with the deer in headlight look. We do this for hundreds of other customers. So you can actually have a conversation where you have some domain understanding. So, can you use a tool from ServiceNow to maybe help do something for you? Yes. Does ServiceNow know the first thing about staffing? No. Will you ever talk to a CSM there who will say, hey, have you tried this instead of that? No. So, there are multiple different criteria, and happy to talk more.
2 other adds on top of this. So 1, ask for case studies and customer references. I think it's no surprise that AI, especially with vibe coding, as it's called, it's very easy to make demos today, but it's actually exceptionally hard to make them work at enterprise scale and production. So for instance, I'd be happy to talk about how we're working with companies like Soliant driving massive amounts of placements using multiple AI initiatives or AI products that we offer. Secondly, I would say one thing that is often overlooked, there's a term in tech that's becoming very popular called forward deployed engineer. And OpenAI and Anthropic are investing very heavily in this area. Basically, it's a rebranding of consultants, frankly, which has suddenly become the hottest role in all of tech. And the reason is there's a last mile delivery problem in AI. And this speaks to creating a demo versus a pilot. It is very easy to get 80% of the way there. The last 20% is so hard because we have to work with your team to understand all of the business logic that's currently inside of your heads and your recruiters' heads and make sure that it's working with your existing systems, existing workflows today. So I would ask, who is my team that I'm going to be working with specifically? I want faces and names. For us, we're all AI engineers. I'm from Carnegie Mellon. My partners are from Stanford. Our team are kind of similar. We're going to sit down with you. We will be there working through it, making sure that we are setting up proper workflows with all the observability and analytics that you need. So ask the question, who am I actually working with? Because AI does not work with just kind of a cookie cutter go live. You need to sit down with a team that's going to be hands-on to get you to the finish line.
Yeah, that's a great point about the consulting revival these days because it's so needed. And if you can't prove value in 30, 45 days, then you're probably taking a little bit too big a bite, right? The all-in-one provider of AI is totally great, but there is this need for a smaller pilot and take a bite, implement the workflow, see the end-to-end handoffs, and and then build, and yeah.
All right, got time for one quick question.
Hi there, Kim Howard. I am so encouraged to hear you talk about business outcomes and tied to ROI, because I think for all of us in the last 2 to 3 years, it's probably not what we've necessarily heard. And so you do get in there and kind of on a wish and a prayer. I'm living the challenge of hearing more and more about tokens, which is a very fearful environment for us. And so knowing your products from kind of a high level, I'd love for you each to talk about what you're most proud of in some of your individual business outcomes and some of the impact you've made that can really resonate with all of us.
Yeah, usage-based pricing is slippery, and it is something that is definitely a big problem. Like the first question with just the overuse of teams' budgets, halfway through the year, and they're already done with their AI budget. I think, just the ability to know and trust from us that there is, you at least have some awareness of the actual end ROI and the metric that is coming out of it. Like there's so many different types of AI. It's just tough to identify what those should be. The ones that we're most proud of is time to claim and time to respond. So right now there's just not a lot of visibility into the process after a lead comes into a recruiter, their ability to own that lead and mark when they followed up, and then have the reporting and ability to see into this dark area that wasn't visible before. So that's our biggest win is time to claim and time to respond.
Yeah, for us, nothing gets me more excited. Well, two things. One, results. So earlier this year, we went live with one of the top 10 healthcare staffing firms. Within 2 months, we were in a small part of their business to start. Within 2 months, we drove 100 placements and then started scaling up across their enterprise. So seeing actual results is extremely motivating and exciting to me. But what I would actually say is the most exciting is seeing candidates and recruiters loving the product. First, with recruiters, I think it's actually exceptionally hard to get recruiters on board with a new tool that they're very happy with. And we're often in our customers' Slacks and Teams chats and just all day seeing love regarding the results that we're helping them drive, the time we're saving, the incredible facts we're pulling on their candidates that they forgot about, seeing that result, and then seeing from the candidates very high NPS, which goes to that misconception around candidates disliking it. I love seeing, the love that we are getting from candidates and recruiters.
Yeah, I'm going to say, first of all, you should stop worrying about tokens. If you're worrying about tokens, you're doing something wrong, because you should let a provider worry about that. You should not be building stuff. I mean, maybe that's your philosophy, but you asked about ROI. I can give you a dozen examples. I'll give you 3 different ones very quickly that actually that actually will tell you that people like different things. One of them is a healthcare company that used to do about 20,000 placements a year. They now do 150 placements a month using Sense. So call it about 1,800 a year or call it about 2,000 a year. 10% of their placements are now being done without a human in the loop. So that's pretty exciting. That's 10% of the placements where they have zero operating cost. So at least on that business, if your gross margin is 23%, your net margin is also 23% minus the cost of Sense. The second is, and this we hear from companies time after time, hey, you've reduced our time to hire from 27 days to 17 days, from 7 days to 1.5 days. This is, I'm talking large organizations, HCA, which is the largest hospital chain in the country, a couple of large palliative care hospitals, so on and so forth. That's second. And then the third is there are some people who are more worried about just making sure that their database stays clean and accurate. And a bad database should be now a thing of the past. You can automatically now set up workflows that go by the cheapest to the most expensive route. So email, text, chatbot, voice, to make sure that they talk to all of your people every 90 days, every 120, every 180, whatever you want, and mark people who are active, available, looking for a job as available, and the others as passive. And just that part has been a huge ROI for some of the folks.
A lot has been said already. I'll just add a couple of quick points. We're very focused on 3 types of metrics. First is operational metrics. Second is revenue or business-oriented metrics. And the third is customer satisfaction. So on the operational metrics, that would be things like response time, response rate, how fast am I reacting. So you see those results right away. You see those results in days. Then you've got the business metrics. So as you know, the time to the speed to submittal and the time to getting revenue from those submittal takes a little longer in our business. It's not 1 or 2 days. So that takes a little longer, but you're focused on that outcome, which is a little longer time frame. And then the third is customer satisfaction. So Pankaj, you mentioned, for example, every one of our conversations that your AI teammate is having on behalf of a recruiter, there is a customer satisfaction score attached with each one. Plus, after the conversation happens, because we have the entire digital history of what happened, we can analyze that immediately. How good was that conversation? And again, we have stats on what was the rate, what was the customer satisfaction rate for each of those things. So when you do your POC, you can keep a close eye on these 3 things.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Can we give our panel a round of applause? That was so good. So good.